Wrestling, like any other media of entertainment, is telling a story that hopes to elicit some form of emotion from you, whether that be happiness, anger, excitement, or disappointment. One of them that will hit you if every element of story matches up perfectly is, of course, sadness. Out of every emotion I listed, sadness is the only one that can't be easily won. I'm not talking about being sad that your favorite wrestler lost. I'm talking about genuine sadness, where you feel tears welling up in your eyes. Stardom has had many moments that you might think classify as sad, but in reality are just emotional. Also, there is an obvious event that I won't be including in this list, but one of them is related to it, so be warned. Also, I'm not putting Act Yasukawa being dragged to the back after being severely beaten by Yoshiko. So, with that said, let's get sad. Kagetsu was one of the most important wrestlers in Stardom history. She not only was a trainer there during her final years, producing some of the most talented rookies we have ever seen, like Saya Ida, she also was at the top of the game in the ring. There were very few who were at her level. Around the time of the Bushiroad acquisition of Stardom, Kagetsu announced it was time for her to retire. She had been battling injuries for the last couple of years and was looking for the right time to step down. The changing of ownership of the company seemed like the perfect time. Out with the old, and the new begins. Unfortunately for us, not many people wanted her to leave. You could see on the face of all of the wrestlers that she was incredibly loved and respected. As Kagetsu gave her last speech to the roster, you couldn't help but feel some tears welling up in your own eyes, seeing all of the women crying. This also happened around the time that a certain wrestling reporter said that Kagetsu was pushed out because everyone backstage was upset with her because she was abusive as a trainer. Then you had the entire roster acting like children having to say goodbye to their parents. Pretty much put those rumors to rest quick. There are a couple constants in Stardom. Tam is going to create a masterpiece storyline with anyone she's feuding with. Newcomers are going to jump to the front of the line for belts, and Mayu telling people good evening in the middle of the day. One constant that seems to be just depressing at this point is that Mayu Iwatani's best friends will betray her. While most of her betrayals were kind of sad, only two really made you feel bad for Mayu and pull at your heartstrings. Saki betraying Mayu will always be a sad moment to me, not because of the betrayal itself, but how Saki did the betraying. Turning on her old friend wasn't enough for her. She wanted to hurt Mayu, saying some pretty hurtful things, getting almost personal. Saying things like, "Did your tag partner betray you? You're a failure," and calling her a worthless dog. What makes this betrayal sad is seeing Saki feel the need to just hurt Mayu as much as she can. While Saki's betrayal was sad, the first betrayal was the worst. Out of all of Mayu's betrayals, when Io Shirai turned on her, it was devastating. Io and Mayu were best friends, goofing around and having fun, but that wasn't enough for Io. Io wanted to be the best and make Stardom the best, and in her eyes, Mayu was falling behind. In the finals for the Goddess of Stardom tag tournament, Io turns on Mayu, purposely hitting her in the middle of the ring, then refusing to let Mayu tag out, causing them to lose the match. As Yoko Bito and Kairi are celebrating, Io Shirai starts attacking Mayu outside of the ring, throws her in, and grabs a mic. Saki's betrayal felt like a personal attack on Mayu and her way of doing things. This speech had a similar vibe, but it was much worse as Io straight up tells Mayu that she isn't good enough to continue with their plans. She states that Mayu and Io were going to get a third person, probably Hazuki, and start a faction. According to Io, Mayu has stagnated and isn't improving anymore, while Io is just getting better and better. This betrayal is the saddest betrayal in Stardom, and all you have to do is watch it for yourself to see why. Who remembers Harumi Mimura? I, of course, do. I used to get crap for thinking so highly of her, but she truly was something special in the promotion. She was the perpetual underdog, and one of the best entertainers to ever step in that ring. Like a lot of wrestlers who started around 2016, she ended up retiring without really achieving anything too great during her stint. That doesn't mean her time there was wasted though. She had many great moments, like her hilarious feud with Natsu Sumire, her running gag, the Shouto kick, and even winning the artist belts once. What makes this list though is a particular moment in her retirement. The retirement speech itself, while sad, was softened by her making everyone laugh, which in a way kind of makes it worse. Nothing breaks your walls down more than laughing while something sad is happening. It opens the floodgates and just makes you realize just how sad the event truly is. The perfect representation of her retirement is the ending of her final match. It was a tag match, the return of J.K. Green, Momo Watanabe, and Jungo Kiona versus Harumi Mimura and Konami. The finish was just like her whole career, putting someone else over at her own expense. In the final moments of her final match, Jungo Kiona pins her, and you can see the absolute sadness on Jungo's face. That alone is tough to deal with, but Hiromi trying to hold it in is gut-wrenching. You can see on her face how she is struggling with it being the end. This match was so great to me that I made a whole video on it. Unfortunately, it's not available to watch because of copyright strikes from Stardom back in the day, but you can watch the re-upload on Rumble. Some of you might not even know what John is. Well, it's a faction that disbanded in 2019 called Jungle Assault Nation. After Jungo Kiona decided to split from Stars because they treated them as leftovers, she formed a group with Natsuko Tora and Kaori Yoneyama, with members Leo Onozaki and Ruka joining at later times. This faction was not very well supported, as you can tell by the fact that Leo and Ruaka didn't get outfit upgrades while in it. For comparison, Leo got an outfit upgrade shortly after joining Queen's Quest later on. While they weren't that supported by booking and merch sales, they were somewhat of fan favorites online, people rooting for them as the perpetual underdogs. Unfortunately, that couldn't last forever though. In the 2019 draft battle, with the losers faction being disbanded, Jungo Kiona was the final loser and failed to win the match. What makes this really sad is the crying and looks on the faces of the members realizing their little family was about to be forcibly split apart. What makes this really sad is that Jungle just wanted a place for the women in Stardom that didn't really fit into the other three factions at the time, Queen's Quest, Stars, and Odotai. If you weren't a serious athlete, a hooligan, or a bright and shiny idol, you didn't really have a place in Stardom at the time. So Jungle took it upon herself to try to build a home, and seeing her face as she's surrounded by her little family after having failed to protect them is heartbreaking. Finally, we have the moment that inspired this list to be made in the first place. Unfortunately, it is linked to the obvious event that I mentioned in the beginning. That event is something I don't like to talk about since it affected me very deeply when it happened. So I'm just going to get to the point. It's Hana Kimura's passing. After her passing, on the first show back, there was a match that involved Rina and Hina. There was a third person also, but it's not important to what I'm talking about. The match ends with Rina submitting Hina with the hydrangea, Hana Kimura's finishing move, while screaming and crying. You see, no one looked up to Hana Kimura more than Rina did. She basically copied her in everything wrestling related. She was essentially a mini Hana. So of course Hana's passing would have affected her a lot. Seeing her scream in emotional agony while performing Hana's move is gut-wrenching. To make things worse, she breaks down and starts crying after the win. It's truly heartbreaking to watch. 6 events that I personally believe are the saddest moments of the subtitled era of Stardom. For those that don't know, I split Stardom into 2 eras, the creation up to 2016. In 2016, Stardom decided to start subtitling the promos for overseas fans. Most of my lists or videos only include events during the subtitled era because I do not speak Japanese, and don't want to speak on something I don't know enough about. What did you think of the list? Did you know all of these events already? What events would you have included instead? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye.